as Blue continues their fast little route down the Santa Fe, and they're doing quite well on their route. Red had set themselves up perfectly, really. They were coming from here, I think, bounced in, they got their doubles, and only a 3 bounce out. They got their money, they picked up the Southern Pacific. This is the other big western line, the second big southwestern line. The UP, of course, being less impressive. They only had a 3 bounce, which gets them down to here. Now, they had the option to either take the B&O and a kind of longer route, or the RF&P and the Penn. These are both owned by the same person, so they're only going to have to pay $5,000 for the pair. But either way, they got to pay $5,000 plus $1,000 to get there, so that kind of sucks for them. Well, after Red made it into Norfolk, they didn't want to buy anything. They were trying to save up for something a little bit moderate size, at least. They had enough money maybe to buy the D and RGW, but not a lot else. Just paid for that SP. However, some other bigger things are starting to fall. The UP went to black when they went in. They're pretty much expected. But that means the northern routes are starting to be bought. And the guy with the WP has really 2 options in hand. To make his WP useful, at this point, he needed to buy either the Dirge or the Great Northern. The Dirge doesn't get you much except a connection into here. The Great Northern, since he had the cash for it, gets him a big pile up here. It's not the best northern route because it doesn't have this little connector here, but it helps what he needs here. And there are other ways into it. For example, this kind of pale green that's almost invisible here, tracing through there. That can be used. There's also a yellow in here that's almost as bad. The Crip can be used, but there aren't a lot of things that hook you up to the Great Northern. So there have been games where I've gotten all of this, but this is my way up to the Great Northern. If I want to get to Minneapolis, St. Paul, I got to do it this way, or ride someone else's track, which at the $5,000 level maybe, at $10,000 it's usually not worth it. And to follow the escalation in the Northwest, CMS TP&P is picked up by Blue when they made it in here. They got tons and tons of money, but there aren't any really big things left. The Crip is the only big thing left, and this is not the time. The time is now to grab your Northwestern rail, because if you don't get it, it may be the place you're shut out of. There aren't a lot. There aren't a lot in any area, really. So here we've got one, the SP barely, not really. Great Northern definitely covers it. CMS, TP&P, the NP, that's 3 lines. The UP gives you 4. And then you got the halfways. We got only 5 players. That makes it a little easier. With 6 players, there's a lot more competition. You're going to get shut out of areas. In 5 players, you may end up with decent routes everywhere, especially with the SP in your hands. We'll see. This is, yeah, he's out of the Northeast though, so it's a big price to pay. All right, next time around, and Red got a crapola situation. They made it here. They made it with a bounce, three spaces, right? Okay, great. Not a lot of money in their hand. They're pretty poor. But they decided they had to get into this race, and they bought the NP. The NP works well with the SP. It hooks up to it, up here, and runs you all the way down to here. Attractive, yes, it means you need either you either need the CBQ, or you need CNNW, or the Crip. But that's okay, there's 3 options there. Well, one of them I'll be able to get, but here's the problem. I rolled destination, got Northeast. Took the bounce. If I had taken the bounce this way, it would have ruined me already. Took the bounce to here, running along the Norfolk and Western. But next turn, I've got to pay $6,000 to get in. If I don't get a bounce out, this run is going to actually probably cost me. I'm going to have to sell off track. I don't know what I'm going to sell. Ugly, ugly situation. And likely do it by auction because you get more money that way. But, you know, here's the thing. Quite often you feel like you're in this death spiral, but it never really seems to happen. Nothing really kind of lets you out of the game. This guy may be able to fall out of the game if he doesn't start getting stuff. He's kind of poor too. But with the SP in your hands, it's kind of tough to lose the game completely. Oh man, terrible. So remember when I said red needed a bounce to get out of here? Well, they got a big enough bounce. They got the doubles. They got a 4. The problem is the doubles are only 2, which doesn't get them there. They barely make it there with the, I mean, they make it there with the extra die, but now they can't use it to get out. Oh, that's going to hurt. So some new tracks started to drop. Green made it up to their location in Minneapolis, and I should get their dot out of here so that I don't get confused. Picked up the Denver and Rio Grande Western. Doesn't really add anything to them except the potential of this big loop. Iffy decision there. They had enough cash. They could have bought something like the Crip that completely hooked them up. I don't like the Crip much. The other options, things like the CNNW, which is kind of nice because it gives you this link to the Great Northern, just like the Crip does. Pleasing as well, but here's the thing. The Crip is a line that I don't like. The reason, it's very dense track, very efficient, but it's a lot of money for what it is. At 29 bucks, it gets you a lot of places, but it doesn't look that much better than things like the Missouri Pacific running through here. It's got a lot of extraneous track. Now that track's important to this guy because he has the Great Northern. It also may be important to whoever has the Northern Pacific. This fella, he's interested in it too. As he is also interested in something else that just fell, the Chicago Northwestern. This is the other route up here. So now there's sort of a competition for the Crip. The Crip is the one thing to connect these routes together, both of them really, the Northern Pacific guy as well as the fellow with the Great Northern, and they have very similar tracks, stuff that goes out to the southwest and up. So I don't know, we'll see who gets there first, but Red's in a lot of trouble. They managed to get lucky though. They got a big enough roll that they could ride here for $5,000. This run between Pittsburgh and St. Louis, which doesn't look vague, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dots, is worth $6,000. So they pocketed $1,000. Now they're down to only $2,000. They have to get kind of lucky to get out of here alive. And we're on to the black player. Well, finishing up that little round after the red player, everybody's got tokens in the southeast, including, most terrifying of all, a death march to Miami down here. This is bad. This is really bad. It means the first people to hit locations, and Red couldn't do it, they didn't have the cash, but who have cash are going to start buying the southern properties up. And for example, the Miami thing, that's almost guaranteed to cost you 10 grand. So the SAL, which I don't remember what it runs at, something like 14,000, is going to almost pay for itself. It's just a matter of getting to a location to buy it. So now the Southeast looks really attractive, but at the same time, we still have a couple players very interested in the Crip. And you got to make a choice there, because you might be giving up something more valuable just to get some extra cash at this point. Hard to tell. Well, things turned ugly there. Blue player. Both people who landed in Atlanta. That would be an interesting rule if you could only buy in the railroads that touch the region that you landed in. Add some randomness to the game, but it would take away, I don't know, some of the static progression of it, where you'd want to hold out. Maybe you wouldn't just buy these Northeastern. Anyway, blue player picked up the SAL, guaranteed to get some money, 5, maybe 10 bucks. Would he have won at the Crip? Maybe. Not terribly much. The only thing really, the CBQ might be tasty for him, but there aren't a lot of lines that he's really desperate for. Between what he has with the Santa Fe, the northern route, the B&O, and he needs a southern route. That's really what he needs anyway. So it kind of helps for him. This doesn't really link up with his B&O because he doesn't have the RF&P. So he's now going to need a connector like the Norfolk and Western or the Southern or something like that to hook himself up there. That's an expensive entry to get to the south. But the truth is, well, there is a way in down here, and maybe he's better off trying to build something here with the L&N or the GM&O which is actually pretty cheap and hooks him right to the B&O. That may be his most desirable choice. But so he picks up the 1, and then coming around, black goes into the same place. Atlanta, same run actually, and picks up the ACL. Now he's more interested in some of these other things because the UP, while it's strong in the north, isn't absolutely powerful, and he's got kind of a gap between his lines. The pen ends here, this ends here. He needs a little connector in there. They may be rich, but again, grabbing the southern line at this part definitely fills in a hole. He's not guaranteed to get anything. These guys can avoid it, but they can't avoid both of them. They're going to have to give money to one or both. Right now, the blue player is probably behind a little, so he looks more attractive to give money to, but he's getting a pile. And now we're up to the green and yellow, who have to make their choices on these next die rolls. A huge roll and not counting ahead hurt the yellow player. He made it 1 space away from Miami with this big 13 here. The green player shot in. He's going to have to pay 5 to get back out. Didn't want to buy anything. Doesn't have enough money for the crip, which he really needs now. And not a lot of other options. It's in a race with red for the crip, I guess. Things keep getting uglier and uglier. Well, green couldn't make its way out of hell. They're stuck here. 1 space, really 2 spaces away from safety. A little closer, they could take the SAL instead out. And now, yellow making it down here, picks up the great connector, the L and N, which is just running through all of here, kind of these lines all over here. Kind of an iffy thing, but it's their way out, and they don't want somebody to buy that because that'll just make things harder and harder on them. Of course, that makes life harder on brown because now they have to shoot up to the gummo and down in order to get, or green, in order to get to New Orleans. People had, especially green, an opportunity they missed. Blue was sitting out here. They couldn't backtrack, heading right for the TP. Blue could have been forced to choose either the TP or the SP. Now, here's the problem. Let's say you bought the TP with some of your cash and you didn't terribly want it. Maybe you forced blue down on the SP, help red out, and that may not really be in your best interests. Red is struggling. Maybe some interesting things to you are going to fall. So it's not that terrible a choice not to do it, but it generally is a good idea to buy something up in front of someone when they screw up like that and make them pay a little bit. Well, as I was going around, I noticed something else kind of interesting here. I'm not sure I remember what it was. I should pick this thing up when I think of things instead of playing out a whole round. But if I do that, I'm just talking constantly and never playing. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention how red got screwed up in New York. They rolled New York. They're in a lot of trouble here. Basically, they're going to be taking the Sioux up to take the pen, but who knows? You know, then they got to come out again. It's just ugly for them, and they've got very little money. And this is the... Usually you don't sell off much. It takes a lot to knock you down enough to sell off, but you just keep playing where you're not gaining anything either. You're not gaining money. You're not gaining cards. You're just, you know, paying other people, and you're stuck in the damn game. Speaking of that situation, red got a bad roll. They got their doubles kicked in, ended up pushing them up there. Yeah, maybe they could have diddled around, but they don't think they have a chance in this game anyway. So their feeling is, the hell with it. I went out, you know, and the only way out, well, I could ride other people's lines and just lose my money. But the only way out without cheating is just stop thinking, run on their track, $5,000 to the owner of the pen. I owe $1,000 more to the bank. I sold the B&M, but I didn't put it up for auction. I don't want to do that. I just, you know, I don't want to deal with that issue. I'm in too bad a shape to worry about getting maybe 6,000 for it instead of the 2 that I got. I know the other thing I forgot to mention. So the black player kind of did this curve around here, taking a long route as though he owns the crypt to remain established on it, because he needs to make it up here to get the crypt and to make it back. And if it costs an extra turn, that's not too big a deal compared to whether it got bought. And especially with me talking about the crypt so much, I didn't want to take the shortcuts. They might have trimmed a turn off easily, but the extra $10,000 is worth saving. And if it's apparent that you could screw him over that way, well, he is in the lead, so he wanted to be careful. And a few people have made it into their stations, black and yellow, for example. Saw some definite purchases there. Red didn't purchase. You know, they're not trying to kill themselves here as badly as they can, but they're just not going to pay much attention. For black, it was the Frisco. They purchased this, and it actually diverted green from their shortest route. Uh-oh. Oh, green's heading up to Portland. Luckily for them, they're capable of making that whole run. New York City to the B&M that they just purchased. Wow, nice. They don't have the connector route, but they're free on that right now. But anyway, first one of the big connectors, the SLSF, that gets you from the south. It connects up the Penn to the UP. It does a lot of what you want it to do. A lot of times I kind of look at the MP as a better line in terms of price. It's a little more expensive, but it gets you a little further out this way. But he doesn't really need it with the UP out there. The MP doesn't add as much, although it does give him some depth down here in the south that he's not going to have. The Frisco comes close, though. Okay, but then the other one is Yellow made their track, and they picked up the TP. Now, it's kind of a, do I want to buy anything at all? But with what they have, with the LNN connecting to here, and the CNO and the CNNW giving them some here, the TP really stretches them about as far as they can go into the southwest at this point. It seems like a good buy to them. They didn't have the kind of money for the crypt anyway, and it's not as valuable to them. Really, what they were thinking the questions were between the TP or breaking down and kind of making things risky for the CBQ. CBQ, the cheeseburger line, that kind of invisible yellow thing somewhere in here. Yeah, they're almost as hard to see in real life as they are on the camera. That's often a very interesting piece. So I had this sort of, because I don't like to save, this goal, which quite often I ended up getting. I would go WP, DRGW, CBQ, CNNW, but then people started to see that some of those parts actually really helped them, especially the CB and Q, which can run you up to the NP. I knew people who hated the NP, but then they kind of became more, and that was also the thing. I went for the cheap man's route, bought all the cheaper routes because they were easier for me because I didn't have to save. All right, I'm gonna load this one.